AX3241. This is going to be my Adaptation Project that I'll be sharing with you guys. I did it based off of a lesson plan that I had found online earlier in the semester, and I really actually enjoyed it. I found it kind of simple and fun at the same time for students of any age to do. It's called Geography Hands, and what it is just kind of discussing the environment that the students live in, where they're located. So it's more of ages, probably I would think from first to maybe third grade, but early third grade, where it's not so much focusing on the states and whatnot and social studies. It's more of just the basics area. That way students know where they're at, what their planet is, their country, continent, and so on. So Geography Hands is exactly what it sounds like. It is a hand that they'll be tracing, which will actually be their own hand, and very simple. The lesson is up here, the lesson name is up here, and right here I just kind of put like a different title to it to make it maybe kind of interesting for the kids to do. Where am I from? So what it is, in each, they're going to trace their own hand, and in each of their fingers they will put locations of what's assigned to them. So in this lesson plan they have the options, or well, the assignment to do their planet, their continent, country, state, and city. So that's what I did here. This is kind of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Of course it can go in any order, it's not that big of a deal. So first off would be their planet, which would be obviously planet Earth, that's where we live on, and then the continent that they live on, which would be North America, the country they live in, which would be the United States, their state, which would be Florida. Of course, you know, if they're from any other state, that's fine, of course. It could be where they're from, maybe where they were born, or it could be if they were born in any other state, or if they're from any other state, they can put that there. It's to the discretion of the teacher, and the city that they live in. So this is kind of something where I think it's important maybe for the little ones to know. That way, you know, they start getting an idea of where am I from, where, you know, where do I do my daily activities from, when I travel, where do I come back to, you know, simple stuff like that. One of the modifications I obviously did was for them to be able to reference a map. Of course they can also have a globe. That way you can just kind of say like, this is planet Earth, but that's to the discretion of the teacher again. Might be something that some students know at an early age, it might be something they don't know if they haven't learned about the solar system yet. So it's kind of up to the teacher. So this is a map that I have, and obviously this shows North America. The only thing that I didn't like about this map was just the fact that it doesn't say anywhere that it's North America, but it does have Canada at the top and Mexico at the bottom, and then obviously the United States in the middle. And it just has all these states all around it. I think it's great for visual learners. It has different colors, and they're kind of divided into their regions, which doesn't necessarily go within this project, but I think it's actually very useful. So what it is if a student doesn't know any of these areas, more importantly probably these 4, since that's basically what the map can be used for, they can identify that, all right, I live in North America, my country is the United States, and the United States is referenced all the way up here as well. What state do I live in? So whichever state it is, I personally would use for my students what state we currently live in. That way they're aware of like where they're actually at. If it's maybe a new student or an ELL learner, or, you know, someone who just moved, maybe if they feel more comfortable, they can say, okay, well, I'm from, you know, Washington, D.C., or I'm from New York, or, you know, something like that. But once again, that's up to the discretion of the teacher. But in this lesson plan, we're going to use where they're actually at. So obviously it'd be Florida, and then the last finger would be where they're living currently, the city that they're living in. So obviously I live at least in Orlando, so that's where I'm putting. In the map, it doesn't show Orlando, it just shows the capitals, so that could also be an alternative that teachers can use just to name the capital of their state, and maybe that can actually help them later on in social studies as they're learning their capitals. So it could be the state that you live in and the capital of the state. So obviously here all over it has the name of the state and the capital. And I feel like this is very important for the younger generation to know, not younger generation necessarily, but maybe the kindergartners or the first graders who are just learning about the locations, and, you know, parents are trying to teach them what their address is and whatnot. I know when I was growing up, this is something that we used often, and we would kind of use Google Earth or whatnot to find, you know, where our home is, to be able to memorize certain things. So that's an option as well. But it's something very simple, it's very fun, it's I mean, if we're looking towards prices, cost effective, because all you need is really paper and pen, and you can have them maybe draw instead of write. So they can draw the earth, so they can do like a globe, they can do the states or whatnot. I use different colors, that way, you know, it's just kind of like stands out a little bit more. But it's very simple, and you know, basically the output to it is just for them to be able to learn where they're at, what the planets are, you know, maybe not even their own planet, maybe them, if they want to be silly and say, oh, I lived on Mars, like, well, do you really live on Mars? So it's just kind of like comparing or whatnot. And you know, normally the modifications are done for ESOL students, at least from what my experience has been. But of course we need to be doing the IEP objectives and whatnot, so there also needs to be modifications for students with disabilities. But I think one that's kind of general that any student can use with a disability or not is just simply having references somewhere in the classroom of a map or a globe, or just places around, pictures around the room. And on the lesson plan as well, it is required or suggested that the teacher has something already placed up on the board showing it there for them, that even if they need it right away, that they can just go up to the board and be able to reference the globe or reference the pictures, or come up to the teacher if they need anything, if they're not really understanding. And then towards the end, the assessment will just be they'll either work in groups and share with each other the answers that they have, or the teacher will have them present it and see how it is. Depending if the teacher is very specific and wants it a certain way, like I'm doing right now, I wanted it for my students to be able to say exactly where they're at. So they're exactly on Earth, they're from North America, they're United States, they live in Florida, and the city that they live in is Orlando or Kissimmee, or you know, wherever it is they live. But I wanted it to be very specific, that way the children can know exactly where they're looking. They can do it like that, and that may be an easier way of doing an assessment. But teachers who just simply want them to share like where they're from, so maybe it could be Earth, but maybe they're from Mexico, so they put their country as Mexico, and their continent is still North America, but their country can be Mexico, and they're from, you know, Chihuahua, and you know, their city is Tijuana, something like that, where it's just kind of like a share kind of group thing. So it can either work either way, depending on the discretion of the teacher. But by all means, the teacher, you know, must have these resources on hand, because you know, even we as adults, if this is a little bit more complicated, if the teacher or a professor asks us a few more things, maybe we don't know, you know, the zip code, or maybe we don't know certain aspects of the city that we should know. So I think this is very important. It's simple, it's fun, but I think it can really help out the younger students between the ages of kindergarten to probably second grade, to kind of figure out and be familiar with where they're living, and just being introduced to geography in general. So that is my adaptation project. Once again, it's called Geography Hands, and it can be modified in many ways, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks.